interesting sutra to discuss today. I think I gave enough copies to you all, and at the end of the discussion I want to bring in some discussion from the Tricycle magazine, which I did not send out to you in the email. But as I was reading it, I only read it after sending the email. I liked the verse in it, and therefore I brought this, for the discussion. But I think this is supportive, as after sending that email, I got texts from different friends, asking about, so what is the Buddha's opinion about reproductivity? Is it so? The word here is pretty. In the translation, you saw it? Did you? How many of you read the email? If you did, yeah. So, and then he puts the word. He replaces pretty with sexy things. So that's not how a Buddhist sutra will translate. But so if you do that. Sensuality does not lie in the world's sexy things. That's how you would read it. So, I think because of that, this sutra is not about sexuality or directly about love, but I wanted to sort of market this discussion, so I put it that way. But that's not the real intention, but this alone, this teaching, the philosophy underlying it has to be understood as we engage in this discussion. Anyway, this is a penetrative exposition. Penetrative here in Sinhala means අවබෝධයක් ඇතිවීමට හේතු වන. And in English, you know the meaning. So it penetrates the mass of greed. It penetrates the mass of greed. That is why it is penetrative. Nibbedhika. So that's how. Is this recording?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's how you can take it. So, any questions about that? Penetrative. And when you do read this, like when we step by step read the sutra, you understand that we have already covered most of it, except some parts that we find at the end. But it's a different way of presenting to the monks the teachings to penetrate their greed, their desires. So the Buddha found this way to teach, this particular way to teach the monks. So not necessarily the lay people, but there is no such distinction. If there were lay people around, he would teach the same way, same thing. Shall we start reading? I thought, just in the last minute I realized this is the shortest we can go, because in the book you have a little bit more repetitions, which this sutra has this translator, again Bhikkhu Bodhi, has wisely shortened, which was helpful to me. I shall teach you, monks, a penetrative exposition, a Dhamma exposition. So, in Pali, Nibbedhika Pariyayam Vo Bhikkave Bhasissami. Bhasissami means I shall teach you. Nibbedhika Pariyaya refers to the Pariyaya is like an exposition. Nibbedhika is the penetrative. So, yeah, they start. You can join us from there. We just read the first 3 lines of this printout that you have. I shall teach you, monks, a penetrative exposition, a Dhamma exposition. Listen to it. Actually, we didn't read the first 3 lines. We are reading now. Listen to it and attend carefully. I shall speak. Yes, Lord, the monks replied. Then the Blessed One then spoke this way. So what is the penetrative exposition? He asked from the monks. He's just asking us. He himself asked that question to begin the discussion. Then he lists these things. Sensual desire should be known. That is kāmā. Kāmā, things that are desirable. Kāmā. Sensual desire should be known. Or sensuality is again, it's a different way to translate it. And then in the next you see feelings should be known. Next paragraph, right? And in the next one, perceptions, and then ditto marks goes the taints, and then the kāmā, and then suffering. These are the ones he includes in the discussion. Sensual desires should be known. The conditioned origin of sensual desires should be known. Conditioned origin. Nidāna sambhava. That is the Pāli for it. Nidāna is the origin of something. So Nidāna also refers to the background story, like the Buddha was a so and so person, and he was there, he was in that village. That's the background of any story. But here Nidāna sambhava is the origin of the sensual desires. Like, what is the origin of it? And their diversity, vinayanti, that is the Pāli for it. So differences, like there are different sensual desires. That's the meaning of it. No big something in it. Their outcome, the Pāli for that is vipāka, outcome. Or in the new translation you find result for the outcome, vipāka. And their nirodha, cessation. How does it cease to exist? Right? And the way leading to their cessation should be known. Kāma nirodha gāmini patipada. Way leading to their cessation. There here means kāma. Kāma nirodha gāmini patipada. If there is a path to the cessation of kāma, and that path should be known. So how many ways you can look at sensual desire now? Let's count. First, you should know what sensual desire is. That's number one. Then the origin of sensual desires. That's number two. Their diversity. Number three. Their outcome. Number four. Their cessation. Number five. And the way leading to their cessation. Number six. And how many things are in the discussion? We have sensual desires, we have feelings, perceptions, the taints, kāmā, and suffering. 6 things discussed in 6 ways. Interesting. There is a sutra in Majjhima Nikāya called Cacaka Sutta, 6 sets of 6, very similar to this. And upon teaching that sutra, 60 monks became enlightened. Every time it was taught, 60 monks became enlightened. I say to people that, that doesn't happen here because we don't have 60 monks. And then you go to feelings should be known, the condition origin of feelings should be known, their diversity should be known, their outcome, their cessation, and the way leading to their cessation should be known. Then perceptions should be known, the conditioned origin of perceptions should be known, so that goes on, right? Perceptions. So what are the Pāli for? Like sensual desires, kāmā, feelings is vedana, perceptions is saññā, taints is asava, and kāmā is karma, suffering is dukkha. Learning about these 6 things in 6 ways. And under number 1, Buddha asks, it was said that sensual desire should be known. Their condition, origin, and so forth should be known. Because of what was this said? I like this so forth, the short form thing. Otherwise, in actual teaching, Buddha may have repeated all these words again and again to convince the monks and also keep their attention into the discussion. Because they had plenty of time, monks were not busy those days, so they were willing to sit and listen. So, because of what was this said, the Buddha asked, there are 5 courts of sensual pleasures, namely, forms cognizable by the eye, forms that you cognize by the eye, that are desirable, attractive, pleasant, endearing, associated with sensuality, and tantalizing. Tantalizing here means causing more desire to arise. The dusty desire will arise when you see certain forms, right? You see certain woman, certain man, then your desire will arise. So, ittha kanta manapa piyarupa kāmo sanghita rajaniya. That's the Pali for this set of words. Ittha is desirable. You wish to see it more and more. Kanta, attractive. That form is attractive to you. Manapa, pleasant. You will not get angry with such people easily because they are pleasant to you. Endearing, piyarupa. You can look at them and stare, continue looking at them and you will not get tired. And associated with sensuality, kāmo sanghita. That particular form has sensuality, that it arises sensuality in a person. And tantalizing, rajaniya. Rajana here means dusty, causing more desire to arise. And same goes with sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, tastes cognizable by the tongue, tactile objects that you feel in your body. So these 5 stuff, right? That is what the Buddha says as sensual desires, right? But then he gives a clarification right at the end of that paragraph. These, however, are not truly sensuality. In other words, it's not in the objects. In the noble one's discipline, which means in someone who is practicing this noble path, in their discipline, these things are called merely courts of sensual pleasures. Different ways you can get sensual pleasures. A man's sensuality lies in thoughts of passion. All your desires are in your conceptual world. Do you get it? That's why we have that famous Pali quote in here, Saṅkapparāgo purissassa kāma. Right? That's how the Pali begins, and that quote refers to the second line of it. A man's sensuality lies in thoughts of passion. Saṅkapparāgo purissassa kāma. A man's sensuality lies in thoughts of passion. Nete, kāmā, yāni, citrāni, loke. Right? Sensuality does not lie in the world's pretty things, citrāni, beautiful stuff. Chitra also in Sinhala means a painting, something beautiful. Nete, kāmā, yāni, citrāni, loke. Those beautiful things are not kāmas, not desires. It's all in your mind. And then the Buddha says, tiṭṭhanti tatheva loko, while the world's pretty things remain as they are. Pretty things are there, nothing to do with karma, but it's you who desire such things. In your mind, desire will arise seeing them. The wise remove the desire for them. Atettha, dhīrā, vinayanti, chando. So chanda is again desire. The wise people, dhīrā, then they discipline themselves to not associate the desirable things with your concepts. It's a very hard thing to do. Now you get the basic principle underlying this, like what is the philosophy behind this? Different objects. If someone were to chase after the objects and continue desiring them, it's all in your head. Sometimes, movie stars, they don't even know you, but you have desires about them, right? So what is, it's all in your conceptual world. You build the world based on them. And their fans will go to their shows and want to take selfies, touch their hand, and they feel very happy if they can get closer to this, their favorite actor, their favorite actress. So that's, satisfying to their conceptual world. But until that moment, that actor or actress never knew of a person like this. Right? It's also the way movies are made. They have a purpose. They want people to get caught up with the movie. So they are very creative in their making. People love to see them and fantasize about them. This is why monks are taught, to abstain from dancing, abstain from going to shows, stuff like that. Because monks then lose their goal and they will want to indulge. When you just only one time you need to see one thing, and then your mind is very smart to hold on to it for your lifetime. If it is the only thing you see, still that is enough for you to bring back the memories. The more you think about it, the more you like it, and desire will arise in you. That's how the mind works. So that is, so this morning when I got that text from one friend about, is this, so can we replace pretty things with sexy things? We can certainly, but that's not an authentic translation. Kāmā is anything that sparks desire. So you can, the advice here, the teaching here is to, leave the objects out there and, start taming the conceptual mind. As you stop thinking about those things, the thoughts will fade away and you have a peace of mind. So, and then the question that also will be discussed in Tricycle magazine part, that we will read later, is, we can bring that up even now, that is the Buddha rejecting reproductivity? It's a man's nature, it's a man's desire, man's natural instinct to reproduce. The goal of Buddhism is different. The goal of ordinary men is another one. We need to distinguish between the two and understand the different goals. And Buddha did not force any people to follow Buddhism, follow his teachings. If somebody came to learn from him, he would teach. He was very straightforward. He didn't keep anything for him, he just taught. And people, upon hearing such teachings, they would decide for themselves whether to quit their ordinary lay life and join the monastic order. And you join the monastic order to go, straight forward in that direction to eliminate suffering, to find final cessation, nibbana, to put an end to the cycle of suffering, and then put an end. So you stop desiring things, you stop thoughts about them, you start is that a word? No, not associating them, and eventually your mind is free, and you are able to concentrate your mind. You are meditating, and peacefully your meditation gives you the desired results. What the mind does is, you tend to be attached to the meditative experiences also. Mind's nature is to get attached to something whatsoever. So when that happens, that's not too bad, because it's not something external. It's something that you want to be in the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, forever. You think that is the end. You don't look further. If that happens, that's an attachment, a good one. But that's not the end, though. Therefore, when conditions change, you may be subject to birth, death, cycle, again and again. Anyway, let's continue the discussion and then come back to this later. And what monks is the conditioned origin of sensual desire? Very simple. Origin is the contact. It is contact that is their conditioned origin. What's the meaning of it? Sparsha is the origin. Phassa is the Pāli word for that. Only when you look at something, then there is contact. When you pay attention to something from your ears, then there is contact. You smell something, then there is contact. You taste something, there is contact. Right? This is how contact, originates. This is how, without contact, there is no way any sensual desire can arise. Whether it is something external or something internal in your mind, there is contact. There is some connection that you make with that object, that particular thing, that gives you certain thoughts and feelings, and stops you from staying in reality, in their true nature. I'm talking about something that is almost impossible to do, that people always have something to indulge in, and or thoughts, or something to complain about, or just looking for something to indulge in, or some state. So contact is the origin of all this stuff, as you will find out later. Okay? And can you, with your knowledge, to make this a discussion, can you tell me how really contact comes into place in terms of, let's say, maybe seeing something? Yeah? Anybody?
Well.
Yeah?
Yeah. So I'm going about my day and I see a beautiful dress on a lady and I think, it's kind of like, I would love that.
Yeah.
And I wonder what the brand is, and, and then you're off, and then I have to just say that it's just a dress.
Yeah, it's just a dress. You want to even go and talk to that woman. She's completely uninterested in you, but you still want to, right? But can you then break that process in terms of the 5 sensual, 6 sense doors, internal and external objects, and then the connection?
Yes.
How do we do that? Yeah.
Just become aware of what you're feeling at that moment, what's the tendency, and just let it go.
That's what we are supposed to do. I'm expecting also, let's break it down this way. Will you see it if you didn't have your eyes? Will you see it? Will you see the dress if you didn't have your eyes? No. If there was no dress, will you still notice it?
No.
Right. So, if eye consciousness was not involved, will you see the dress?
No.
No. So when any of these three things disappear, do you think eye contact can arise? No. The dress no longer matters, or nothing matters in that. You see how contact arises? Yeah. That's how we find in these sutras that the Buddha taught people. He undo it based on the experience people have. Same thing with the sounds that you hear, same thing with the smells, same thing with the tactiles, the stuff that you feel, and thoughts, right? And tastes also. Okay, we will go on. And what mounts is the diversity of sensual desires. The Venus sensual desires in Sinhala, different sensual desires. There is one sensual desire for forms, right? Another for sounds, another for odors, for tastes, and for tactile objects. This is called the diversity of sensual desires. There is a diversity in it. It's not one sensual desire, seeing forms, hearing sounds, etc. Next, what mounts is the outcome of sensual desire. When you have certain sensual desire, what is the result of it? Yeah?
So the previous that we didn't have the vijnana or the mental.
Yeah, that part sometimes the Buddha excludes from the discussion, sometimes he brings it in. Very simple. But someone who has that knowledge can bring that into the discussion. So if you say, if you add the sixth one, the consciousness part, then thoughts that you are conscious on, something like that. Or dhammas, phenomena that you grasp onto, anything that comes to your mind is called dhamma. Okay? So the outcome, vipaka, is one motivated by sensual desire produces personalized existence, an individuality born of this or that desire. Because your desires are yours, my desires are mine, your desires are yours, and theirs are theirs. Different individuals build a person in it based on their desires, belonging either to the meritorious or the demeritorious, punya bhagya or apunya bhagya. That's the Pali for that. And the result will be explained a little later. Punya bhagya ones, the ones that are making merits, will lead you to heaven, and the ones that are making demerits, apunya, will lead you to the misery, hell realms. Okay? This is called the outcome of sensual desires. At the end, you have a destination to go. And then the cessation of it. How do we end the sense desire? Through the cessation of contact, there is cessation of sensual desires. Just like I explained earlier, when there is one link missing in that cycle, there is no way sensual desire can arise about that dress. That was not desire, but multiple thoughts about that event. That will not arise if there was no contact. Right? That's the end. How do we do that in meditation though? Can you go to a contactless state in meditation? I think it is promising in the teachings that you can. That is where everything ends in terms of your meditative experience, according to the Buddhist teachings, which is not something people desire to do. They feel scared going there, that they will perhaps feel like a loser, or they will feel scared, all kinds of things about that experience. But that is possible, is taught in the Buddhist teachings. That's exactly what this refers to. The end. Okay. And then the Buddha says, and it is this noble eightfold path that is the way to leading to the cessation of sensual desires, the Arya Atthangika Magga, noble eightfold path. Namely, Samma Ditti, right view, Samma Saṅkappa, right intention, Samma Vāca, right speech, Samma Kammanta, right action, right livelihood, Samma Ajiva, right effort, Samma Vayama, right mindfulness, Samma Sati, right concentration, Samma Samadhi. See, at the end you see right mindfulness and right concentration, like Samadhi states of your meditation, there you end contact. If monks, a noble disciple in such a way knows sensual desires, if in such a way he knows the conditioned origin, the diversity, the outcome, and the cessation of sensual desires, and the way leading to their cessation, he knows this penetrative holy life as the cessation of sensual desires. That's the end of it. Okay. And then under number 2, it's at the end of that part, Buddha says, because of this I taught you that the origin there and so forth should be known in terms of sensual desires. And then about feelings, the same cycle, almost the same stuff. There are amongst these 3 kinds of feelings. What are the 3 feelings? Pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant feelings. The origin of it is the contact. Diversity, there are pleasant feelings, there are carnal, samisa, or non-carnal, niramisa. But, carnal is something about the flesh, something that you feel in the flesh. Non-carnal is niramisa, something you don't feel in the flesh, but you feel it in meditation. Or samisa, carnal, refers to something associated with defilements, and niramisa, something non-associated with defilements. That's the latest translation for these 2 words, samisa, niramisa. Feelings that you feel with desires, feeling that you feel without desires, niramisa. So niramisa sapa is the word we use in Sinhala, means a bliss that you experience without desire. So I think that translates, is very reasonable. So unpleasant feelings that are associated with sense desire and not associated with sense desires. And then neither painful nor pleasant feelings that are associated with sense desires and that are not associated with sense desires. That's the diversity of feelings. And the outcome, same thing. It creates an individual based on the feelings, and also meritorious and demeritorious destinations. And the cessation is also the cessation of contact. When you end contact, there is no way feelings can arise. And the path is again the Eightfold Path. Number 3, perceptions, sanya. There are 6 kinds of perceptions: rupa sanya, saddha sanya, etc. Perception of forms, sounds, odors, tastes, tactile objects, and mind objects. Origin, contact. Diversity, there is one perception pertaining to forms and others pertaining to sounds, odors, that diversity. Outcome, I say I have, and what monks is the outcome of perceptions? Perceptions, I say, have communication by speech as their outcome. As one perceives a thing, so one expresses it, saying, so I have perceived it. So it depends on the way you perceive something, then you explain about it. That's that's the outcome of it. Cessation is the same way. Ending contact ends perceptions. To end perceptions, you follow the Noble Eightfold Path. Right? And number 4, taints, asava. 3 taints. The taint of sensual desire, kāmasava. Taint of desire for becoming, bhavasava. The taint of ignorance, avijjasava. Origin of asava is ignorance, not seeing the reality, not seeing the Four Noble Truths. Diversity, there are taints leading to hells, to the animal realm, to the sphere of ghosts, preta realm, to the human world, and to the heavenly realms. Different taints leading you to different destinations. And what monks is the outcome? One immersed in ignorance produces personalized existence, born of this or that, belonging either to the meritorious or the demeritorious. Right? Cessation is when you end ignorance. There's a difference there. When you end ignorance, then asavas, defilements, also end. And the path towards that is the Noble Eightfold Path. Then there's a piece about karma and there's a piece about suffering. So karma should be known. And again, this part is famous. It is volition, monks, that I declare to be karma. Having willed, one performs an action by body, speech or mind. Chetanaham bhikkhave kammam vadami. Cetayitva kammam karoti kāyena vācāya manasa. Can you say intention is karma directly? But intention here is a big part when you commit a certain karma in your life. Without intention, your body will not correspond and produce the result. So it's best you have that understanding. It's not just by thinking you don't commit a karma. But what happens in the thought realm, if you have a strong desire to hate someone and you keep it for lifetime, it produces a bad destination for you. So there is a result of that kind of thought. Although you do not act upon that desire, your mind has really worked on it and has made yourself even get sick because of that strong desire to attack someone. Between husbands and wives, if you hate each other, you tend to get sick in the long run. And the result is, perhaps some bodily cancer or something may come. Therefore, it's best when you feel toxic, you go on your way and you let the other person go in their way, so you don't really stick to each other fighting. This is unnecessary. So the cessation of karma is, again, through the cessation of contact, there is cessation of karma. Karma has threefold outcomes: in this life, in next life, or subsequent future lives. Right? That's about rebirth. Even in the future life, Moggallana, although he was an enlightened monk and he already had a lot of psychic abilities, he tried to escape death a couple of times, and the last time he surrendered. He knew he had to endure it, and that was the end. He passed away after that. Some bandits beaten him to death. That's what happened. Because he had done it in a different form in a previous lifetime, and it came after him. And that's how karma works in Buddhism. So it's best you don't produce such strong karma in your baggage that when conditions are ready in a future life, you will be in a situation like that, and then you will be vulnerable to be attacked. Okay? If monks, a noble disciple in such a way knows karma, then he knows the cessation of karma too. And then suffering, its conditioned origin should be known. What is suffering? Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair are suffering. Not to get what one wants is suffering. In brief, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging are suffering. What are the 5 aggregates? Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Saṅkhāra, Viññāna. Forms, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations and consciousness. You brought this up at a different discussion, I remember. So the diversity. What is the conditioned origin of suffering? Is the craving. Because of trusna, because of craving, there is suffering. And the diversity, there is intense suffering, dukkhaṃ adhimatta, and moderate suffering, parittam. There is suffering that fades away slowly, dandha virāgi suffering, and suffering that fades away quickly, kippa virāgi. So virāgi is fading away. The outcome of suffering. So because of suffering, you do all these things. What? There is a person who is overwhelmed by suffering, his mind in the grip of suffering, he grieves, mourns, laments, beats his breast. You do this. Weeps and becomes deranged. Or in his misery, he searches outside for a remedy. Like, who knows a word or two for bringing my suffering to an end? Who knows the path? Who can help me? When you are in a need to meet a therapist, that's what you do, like, who can help me? Hence, I say, the outcome of suffering is either derangement or search. You start to look for an answer for that. When some people lose something, they start to really feel the pain and they start looking for a solution. Cessation of suffering is the cessation of craving. The Eightfold Path is the path, and when you know suffering that way, that's the end for suffering. So that is the penetrative exposition, the Dhamma exposition. That's the end of the teachings. And then we have a few minutes to explore this. This is from Tricycle magazine. This was published for Valentine's Day. Not by me, but by the Tricycle magazine people. This is in the beginning it says, to honor Buddhism's often complicated relationship with sex and romantic love, we decided to do a special interview with Tricycle contributing editor Alan Bodiner, Badiner, I think, Badiner, adjunct faculty in transformative studies at the California Institute of Integral Studies. Badiner holds a master's degree in Buddhist studies and has been a student of Thich Nhat Hanh for over 20 years. Okay? So that's the interview. So this person asked a question. The person who is interviewing Badiner asked the question, if I want to live an enlightened life, do I need to stop having sex? Yes, you would need to stop, but only to demonstrate sufficiently to yourself that you are able to do so. Right? Subsequently, you will be acting from real choice, no habit, compulsion or escape. It would be sex as a conscious choice. I imagine that the quality of the experience can only benefit from more consciousness and self-awareness. So he's supporting the idea of going in that direction. Buddhism is not inclined to deny the reality of basic human impulses, including sexuality. as sexuality is a normal, healthy, and necessary aspect of human existence. Tibetan Tantric Buddhism even includes techniques for bringing mindfulness and practice to it. Some recent Tibetan teachers and several colorful Zen masters have been open to using sex as a skillful means to point their students towards realization. This is not in the Theravada form of Buddhism, but in some forms of Tibetan Tantric Buddhism, Tantrayana. Tricycle magazine is not very much Theravada, but Mahayana kind of teachings and teachers. Next question. Why is it then that Buddhist monks and nuns have traditionally refrained from sexual activity? Sex is their ever-sweet and ever-present distraction. It is understandable why diminishing one's attachment to sex is helpful to keep Buddhist initiates focused on self-development. Monks and nuns have always had strict limitations on physical contact between them and between them and lay people. But the Buddhist rule book, the Vinaya, was mostly about protecting bhikkhus and nuns from harm or abuse. There is also a higher standard of restraint expected for clergy, although historically it hasn't always been actualized, and there are multiple teachers famous for crossing the line. Sexual abuse issues. Okay, the next question. In the West, the majority of us never really question the positive value of romantic relationships. We might complain about them or roll our eyes at them, but mostly we assume that they are what we need on a fundamental level. Should we be thinking more critically about our deep belief in romantic relationships? The answer is, all beliefs should be subject to questioning, including the idea that romantic relationships are always what we need. That's not something we really need. Some people don't even think about romantic relationships. They just live just a normal life. Ironically, letting go of such a belief may make it more possible for a romantic relationship to actually manifest. So if you let go of that kind of belief, then it may even help you to manifest a good romantic relationship. And he says, I just read a review of a book in the Atlantic called Love, How Our Supreme Emotion Affects Everything We Feel, Think, Do and Become, in which the psychologist Barbara Fredrickson asserts there is no such thing as everlasting love. She talks about micro moments of positive resonance versus a romantic commitment that you share with one special person, a notion she calls the love myth. She says new scientific studies show that this belief limits the health and happiness you can derive from everyday love. Buddhism never argues with good science. Usually we find ourselves somewhere along a spectrum of romantic involvements, and there isn't one sweet spot for everyone. Buddhism is fairly agnostic about romantic relationships or marriages and doesn't overly concern itself with issues like infidelity, disloyalty, and divorce. Obviously, fidelity and loyalty are usually seen as essential components of a happy marriage, but Buddhism views marriage as a secular institution and leaves people to sort these things out for themselves, including whether the relationship is between same or different genders as well as between two or more partners. There is no whole lot of discussions in Buddha's teachings about these things because his focus was to teach monks who are already there with the mission to end suffering. But he did give advice to couples, how to keep fire in-house, not to spread the fire out, which means don't tell your husband's secrets with everybody. Your disputes, your problems, keep it to yourself and you will have a peace of mind. Because people love your problems. They love to hear. Okay, as lay Buddhists, how can we begin to have rewarding, non-harming relationships? You are more likely to have rewarding, non-harming relationships if that is in fact your goal. And that is the goal in Buddhism for all your relationships, from family to strangers. The Pali word metta, the name for the powerful Buddhist meditation on loving kindness, means the nature of a friend. Mittassa bhavo. Anyone with mindfulness of that goal can achieve it, Buddhist or otherwise. Okay, and then I got another piece from a different one. This piece was published in 2013, the one I just read. In contrast to the other religious law of Judaism, Christianity and Islam, the Buddhist precepts are very general, expressing morality in spirit rather than letter. Nothing in the 5 lay precepts can be constructed to oppose genetic manipulation, provided that it is not harmful. Buddhism does not try to regulate lay behavior by detailed codes of laws, but rather by teaching sati, mindfulness, and ahimsa, harmlessness. The ultimate value in Buddhism is not living in accordance with the code of religious laws, but being aware of the effects of one's actions so as to minimize them. In general, a Buddhist would be concerned that genetic knowledge not be used in a way that causes suffering, but would not be opposed in principle to the acquisition or application of such knowledge. Buddhism places its highest value on knowledge, which it sees as the sole vehicle for enlightenment and release from suffering. Ignorance, not sin or disobedience, is the case of a human's unhappy state. Hence, Buddhism may be seen as favoring the acquisition and use of genetic knowledge. Genetic here, I think, means reproductivity, right? Reproduce. Provided that it is applied in ways that help rather than harm living beings. Changing the genetic code so as to eliminate a disease in the offspring would be quite acceptable so long as it was carried out skillfully, that is, not harmfully. Partner selection for genetic or ethnic reasons is not supported by Buddhism, which abolished the Hindu caste system. Buddha says, just select whoever you want, don't look at the caste. However, such selection would not be ethically improper if it did not cause suffering to those involved. Perfect, Tani. So what do you think? We discussed in the beginning that it's all in your conceptual world that we find desires, not in the sexy things outside. I will freely use that word. And then we brought up this discussion about Buddhist view about reproductivity and love, desires. So we also came to know that Buddhism leaves those things for the lay people's institution, especially things about marriage, between same gender or opposite gender relationships, because the goal of Buddhism at that time was to address the ending of suffering and address any problem that a monk or a lay person asked. If it was related to that matter, if it helped the person, then the Buddha would explore on that matter. Even then, if anyone has made a mistake for the first time, especially among the monks, he is exempted from punishment. That monk then will be taught that don't do this again. If you do this again, then you will be a defeated monk, that you no longer will be considered a monk. You can do whatever you want, but you are not in the pure lineage of monks. Parajika, that's the word. You lose the monk status. Any questions, comments?
When they become parajika, they develop themselves or just...
Well, that's very, very tricky question. Like, when you become a monk, you are only keeping, as a novice monk, you become a novice monk first. And then you become a full monk, upasampada monk. So novice monk keeps 10 precepts and full monk keep an uncountable number of precepts, but basically 227 in mind. Right, so what status you lose? The monk status, full monk status, then you can still remain as a monk, restrained to 10 precepts in your life. Right? You only lost your higher status. That's one way to look at it, but I want to think that, because if you think that way, monks tend to do anything and still remain as, because who knows, like whether this is a 10 preceptor novice monk or non-10 preceptor, monk. So it's best monks abstain from engaging in 4 gravest offenses, right? Sexual misconduct, stealing, lying about things, and also telling that you have higher achievements without having them, to get the attention of people. So when you do any of that, you are subject to expulsion from the monastic order. Monks have a way of, it's like a monk's court will decide on that. They will do the judgment and then you are expelled from the monastics. Did that help? Yeah.
I had a different question.
Yeah.
If possible.
Yeah.
I was wondering, the text talks about contact as the origin of sensual desires and many of these. And you mentioned before that it is possible to reach a state with no contact.
Yeah,
And
a
you said
state,
that when
state
you
free of contact.
Right. Were you referring to Nibbana,
Yeah.
the very end of the path?
Very end of the path. That's where this individuality, the flow, stops, ends. When mind, put it this way, when you have nothing to be conscious on, we always have something to be conscious on. So come to the moment where you are in neither perception nor non-perception. You are touching it and not touching it, sort of state. And there, when there is no perception, nothing to perceive, your consciousness has nowhere to land. Nothing to be conscious on. It vanishes, it ends. There is no way contact can arise in that state. That's the state I was referring to.
Which will be the final.
Which is the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the meantime,
Yeah.
I guess we always have to deal with contact, because no matter where we are
No, I think
reborn,
that's, There is a Nirodha Samapatti, a state where you experience the cessation of consciousness and then you remain there with strong determination for, let's say, 7 days maximum. There's such freedom, and whoever has achieved it, according to the reports in the teachings, have loved it, because there's basically nothing you experience, no pain, nothing you feel. It's just like an anesthetic state, but controlled anesthetic mindful state. But that's possible, a state where basically, according to the description of it, there is no contact until at the end of that period you start to come back, and there is discussion of like what comes first, whether what's one of the 3 things, which formations, kaya sankhara, vaci sankhara, mental formations, bodily formations, or what's the other one? That's verbal formations. Which of the 3 things will first arise? And according to Majjhima Nikāya 40, number 43, please read that tonight. So this will answer your question. About, I think it's Chulla Vedala Sutra. What comes first is, according to my memory, is I think mental formations. What is mental formation? Again, is perception, feelings, and consciousness are mental formations. These three always live together. When you start perceiving something, then you start to come back to life slowly. And then I think they say verbal formations, and then you start to breathe. Verbal is thoughts, and then you start to breathe. There you understand bodily formations. So a process of like almost dead state and then coming back to breathe again. But I think I may have missed the order, but just to give you the answer. So, yeah.
So I would like to clarify one fact we have in Buddhist culture.
Yeah.
That Vishaka, she
Yeah.
had attained that sovan status, but still managed to have like many kids.
Yeah.
With her. So is it possible? Is it like
Yeah.
we don't have to become a monk to attain?
Yeah.
Sensual?
Yeah, so I think you self-answered the question. The point is, this is his question. This supporter of Buddhism, she was a laywoman at the age of 7. She became a stream winner, the first stage of enlightenment. And then she went on to, become an adult, got married, had so many children. So then the question is, once you have attained the first stage of enlightenment, can you still have relationships and have kids and all that? When you look at what really happens in the first stage of enlightenment, then you know that it is possible. First stage of enlightenment doesn't mean that you are fully enlightened. You have not really done the full work, but you have understood 3 things. What 3 things? Sakkaya Ditthi, Vicikicca, Silabbata Paramasa, gone. Sakkaya Ditthi is a self-view. Upon listening to the teachings, your self-view has gone. That you have worked on it, and you feel that you understand that self-view is a false illusion. Vicikicca, you don't have any doubts about this kind of teaching. Silabbata Paramasa, you don't look for any other practice than meditation. That's what happened to her. She did not end all desires. So she can just live a normal life. So as lay people, you obviously can even attain the next stage, where your desires are lessened, not completely gone. The desire to, kāmā, patigha, these two, like the sensual desires and aversion, are lessened but not completely gone. Even then you can remain as a lay person. And then in the 3rd stage, non-returner stage, the second one is once returner, the 3rd one is non-returner. There your sensual desire, kāmā and patigha, aversion, have completely eradicated. So you don't have any, you no longer wish to engage in the sensual world. And when you die, you will not be born in any heavenly, sensual, human realm. You will be born in pure abodes. Unless you want to end suffering within this lifetime, in which case you will become a fully enlightened person. You eradicate all ignorance and you are gone, you disappear. So that's the final stage. But if you are not there yet, you have a place to go. That's how the teachings go. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Any more questions? I know what question you have. When do we end this, right? Okay, we will end this. Shall we transfer minutes? Sharing minutes. That's, I think, at the end of your booklet. Single page. Some books may not have it. Maybe the book behind you may have another. Just a single page at the very end. Okay. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. Thank you for coming. Happy meditation.